So how do you find a co-founder? If you're a startup founder, you've been building your business, you've been building your company for a little bit of time, you may have heard that it's useful to have a co-founder. And it's useful to have a co-founder for a number of reasons. The first is teams are one of the key things that investors look for in selecting companies. And so solo founders definitely have a little bit of a disadvantage when approaching investors. Investors want to feel like they're investing in a team, in a company that's growing and thriving. And one of the key aspects that investors look at is, has this founder been able to convince someone else that this idea is worthy, is exciting, is important, and something to invest their own time, energy, and effort into. If a founder isn't able to convince one other person that their company is worth their time and effort, then it's a good filter for investors to really determine if the company really has the traction, the momentum, and validity. Now, finding a co-founder is particularly challenging, especially if you've been in your startup world. You don't necessarily have the money to invest in hiring someone full time. And so how do you go about that? The key is really finding someone who is complementary to your skill sets and also someone who is interested in going along on the startup journey. So the ideal person for a co-founder isn't necessarily someone who's looking for a job, but someone who really wants to go on the startup adventure and is willing to take some risk to be compensated by equity. Now, there are two different scenarios that you should really consider. One is if you're a technical co-founder yourself, or one is if you're more business oriented. The analogy I often give is the scenario of Microsoft, where Bill Gates was a technical founder, and Apple, where Steve Jobs was a non-technical founder. Again, there's no pro or con, there's just different ways to approach the problem. If you're a technical founder, you're going to want to find someone who's a real complement to your skill sets from the technical side with some business experience or marketing experience. For Bill, this was Steve Ballmer. On the other side, if you are a business-oriented founder, a marketing-oriented founder, you can really tell the stories and you can convince people that your product and your vision is the right one, then you're going to want to find a technical co-founder, someone like Steve Wozniak, to balance you out. Now, where are you going to find that co-founder? It's very likely that you already know that person. Maybe you interacted with them at a past job. Maybe you interacted or worked with them in school or some other function that you overlapped. But look first within your own network to see who you've worked with and who has some of that personality trait that you get along with. The key element is that you trust that person. And this is why I say it's likely that you may already know that person, because that way some of the trust has already been established. But even if you don't know that person and you're looking in your close circle of friends or network, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or other networks, you're looking for someone who you can ultimately trust and someone who's also interested in going on that startup journey. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to leave their full-time job. They are really interested in what you're doing, and the key thing is starting that relationship and starting to build that trust. It's not going to happen overnight, so I recommend that co-founders or people looking for a co-founder explore that opportunity of working together by essentially dating. Start that process of spending a little bit of time with that individual, brainstorming different problems, brainstorming different possible ways that you guys could work together to solve different aspects of the business. When you're really starting to feel that click and that bond and you're really vibing with that person, that is a good signal that you're on the right path. Now, if you do think you're on the right path, don't jump in and give that person half your company. Really think about your equity and your business and figure out what's going to be a fair way to both divide the equity in the business and establish a vesting schedule. And that really means that the equity matures over time. So it doesn't happen all at once, but over the course of 3 or 4 years, your equity gets shared with that co-founder. That way, you're really building on that relationship, building on that trust, and everyone is motivated to stay in the company and to build something truly amazing. Now, if you've searched your personal network and you're like, that person is not in my network, I need to go look outside my personal network, that's fine too. As you're looking for people and making connections, again, think of it like dating. You're reaching out to a lot of individuals trying to see if there's a spark to brainstorm if they are interested in potentially exploring joining a startup. You're not asking them to get married. You're not asking them to jump and join into your startup. You're asking them for a conversation to see if their background or experience could be interesting to brainstorm and potentially team up with you. Now, the people who respond positively to that, again, build that relationship, build that trust, to ultimately see if that person would be a good fit for you to work with long term. But that's a good way to start that process of exploring and trying to find someone who's going to help take your startup to the next level. I'm Greg Reyes. I talk about entrepreneurship, technology, and design. I'll catch you in the next one.